Sanderson's opening for Mistborn is a perfect balance of setup and suspense, and it's one of the best openings I've seen from a book so far, and that includes my favorite book of all time, Name of the Wind, where I felt that it had the exact opposite reaction from me. With that book, I felt as though Patrick Rothfuss had written the character as though we, as the reader, needed some form of foresight to actually comprehend the importance of his main character. And it wasn't until he had told us of, the kind of backstory and importance that this character had, for me to actually understand the importance of it, of his main protagonist. And that was complete opposite for Sanderson's book, where he didn't just tell us, he showed us. So I think that Mistborn's prologue is great for a couple of reasons. And one of the biggest is that from the get go, we are shown exactly visually how this world looks like. An example of this is that mists play a very big part of this world and its setting, well, obviously given by the name Mistborn. And there's a very deep connection between the mists and the people who actually use the abilities, who are called mistlings and mistborns. And from the get go, we're immediately kind of shown the way it looks and how it feels. And that was so important for someone like me because as a reader, I have been quite intimidated by very large world building. I feel that when there's a lot of characters and there's a lot of different arcs going on in the story, it's already complicated to follow as it is. And if we are traveling from so many different regions, and if there's a very large map and world, I just, yeah, I just get intimidated by it. But I felt that this book really introduced it to us very well and very quickly. And it wasn't just thrown on us, you actually get a feel of how it is to live in this world. And the second is that we are shown exactly how the hierarchical structure of this world and the people who live in it are. So there are what are called noblemen, who are basically the higher class, the upper class people of this society, and they oppress and control the lower class populace, who are called the Scar. And very quickly, we get a feel of how the structure works, and then we are introduced to the main hero and changemaker of the story, Kelsier. And the way this book introduces him is very, very well done. And I want to read a kind of quick and small passage from the book. Much in Brandon Sanderson's fashion, I think it's best to show you rather than just tell you how good it is. So this part here is the first part that we see or hear a mention of Kelsier or a reference to him. And it's in the perspective of a nobleman called Tresting. So yeah. Tresting nodded as he watched the crowd of lazy Scar, some working with their hoes, others on hands and knees, pushing the ash away from the fledgling crops. They didn't complain, they didn't hope, they barely dared think. That was the way it should be, for they were Scar. They were. Tresting froze as one of the Scar looked up. The man met Tresting's eyes, a spark, no, a fire of defiance showing in his expression. Tresting had never seen anything like it, not in the face of a Scar. Tresting stepped back. Tresting stepped backward reflexively, a chill running through him as the strange, straight-backed Scar held his eyes and smiled. Tresting looked away. Curden, he snapped. The burly taskmaster rushed up the incline. Yes, my lord. Tresting turned, pointing at. He frowned. Where had that Scar been standing? And I think that, yes, it can be argued that it feels a little bit cheesy or a little bit juvenile, the way that this whole interaction has, played out. Especially with him, kind of looking up and just meeting, his almost foe or adversary in the eye and laughing and smiling at him. But when I finished this book and I had come back to the prologue to kind of see of, how was this world introduced to us, I thought that it was just simply put perfect. It is exactly like the character to kind of toy with his enemies. And so it wasn't like it was just thrown at us. as you read on in the book, you find that Kelsey has a very deep hatred for these noblemen, and so I thought that was just very well done. So the prologue goes on with Kelsier speaking to this particular scar plantation. So they call it a scar plantation because they are basically small groups of the scar who are working for each different nobleman and different keep, and they're basically being oppressed and worked within what they call these plantations. And so Kelsier goes on to speak to the people of this specific plantation, and there was a particular quote that I highlighted from this, and I just kind of wanted to read that as well and talk a little bit about it. So he's speaking to the eldest member of this plantation, and so Kelsier has brought in some food that he's stolen from a nobleman's keep. And so after a little bit of a conversation with this older man, this is what the man says to him: "New tastes are like new ideas, young man. The older you get, the more difficult they are for you to stomach." Now, this quote really was it hit me a lot because there's a lot of layers to it. So this man, this older man, is explaining to Kelsier why he's not eating the food. First of all, it's the idea that as you get older, you are basically weaker to eating new things. That's one aspect to it, of course. But the second is that this is the oldest man that he's speaking to in this plantation. And so Kelsier, this plantation has heard of him. There are rumors behind Kelsier and his character. And so we're not only introduced into that through this prologue, but it's the idea that Kelsier's arrival at this plantation is to kind of spread that story of him and the fact that he is trying to bring up some form of a rebellion against what this book's main villain is, the Lord Ruler. And so this quote clearly shows that the old man is kind of scared or resistant to, the sort of new ideas that Kelsier is bringing with him. Um, and so the third and most important part of that as well is that it's not just in reference to this man specifically, but it clearly goes on to show that the Scar population as a whole, regardless of if they're young now, but they've been oppressed for so long that, and this prologue clearly just sets that tone for us and shows us where the story is going and how the background of these characters are. And this is within just the first few pages that I'm starting to get an understanding of the kind of world we're in and what Kelsey's role in it is. So I thought that it was just from just a few lines, it just sets the tone so remarkably well. The prologue ends with Kelsier ending up saving a young girl from this nobleman Trusting's keep. The reason is that, of course, these noblemen they have the power and control to abuse, kill, and sleep with any of the Scar people that they want to. And the problem is that the rules given by the Lord Ruler is that a nobleman can sleep with any Scar woman that he wants to, but he has to kill them after he slept with them. And the reason is that because of the way the nobility's bloodline has worked up, is that some of these noblemen carry a gene within the blood that can allow people or their offsprings to have the ability or to use the ability and the magic system of this world, which is called allomancy. And so obviously the Lord Ruler doesn't want noble people to be mixed noblemen to be creating offsprings with what they consider the inferior, population and then producing individuals with these powers. So that's the rule that they have to kill with them, to have to kill these women after they slept with them. And as soon as Kelsey has heard of this, he is completely furious. And he basically storms out from the little area of the Scar population, or this Scar plantation. And to cut a long story short, he burns down the entire nobleman's keep and everyone in it. And he saves the girl. And what this does is that it forces involuntarily this Scar plantation to basically join him in his rebellion because obviously they can't stay there now. The Lord Ruler will send off people to investigate and find out what's happened. And so yeah, they are involuntarily forced into, finding out their new place in this world. And yeah, I think just looking back at this prologue, it is just such an amazingly well done introduction to the story. It very quickly introduces us into the setting, the character, um, and just especially the main protagonist, Kelsia. And it's not just rumors that we see of him; we see him in action, and it just completely sets up the tone of the story. So I think that this is a prime example of how a book and a story should start up and introduce the reader and the audience to a new world and new characters. And I think that that is a testament to Brandon Sanderson's writing skill because it's definitely not an easy thing to do. And there's so much more that can be said about this prologue and about this book, but I think that I will end it there. And yeah, stay tuned for some more snippets on my thoughts on Mistborn and what I liked and disliked about Sanderson's writing skills. Not that there's a lot that I disliked. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Take care and I'll see you in the next one. Fi Amanillah.